Let's do a little recap on Mexican American history. Between 1929 and 1936, we saw the implementation of a policy in the United States known as Mexican Repatriation. And this was a policy that was being implemented due to the start of the Great Depression, with the justification being that those who were being deported were undocumented immigrants who needed to be removed in order to open up jobs for real Americans. The things that people were being rounded up indiscriminately, well, pretty discriminately. They were being rounded up simply for being of Mexican heritage, whether they were undocumented, documented, or natural-born U.S. citizens. In fact, of the estimated 2 million people who were deported, 60% of them were U.S. citizens. These people were targeted due to their ethnic or racial identity and deported in such numbers and in such a targeted fashion that experts argue that this meets the legal definition for an ethnic cleansing. And this is but one example in U.S. history where policy has been used to allow the indiscriminate harassment or violence against a minority community in the United States. It's not the first time we see it in U.S. history, and as we have seen recently in places like Texas, it's not the last. With Texas's SB4, we again see policy being used to allow racial profiling and indiscriminate harassment of Latinos under the guise of border security. Such as we saw recently with the detainment of a Mexican family which was detained after officers in unmarked vehicles rammed the family's vehicle with their own and then held them at gunpoint. And this is a family of Mexican heritage with U.S. citizenship, which was coming back from a trip into Mexico to visit family, a trip which is pretty routine for Mexicans, especially those living on the U.S.-Mexico border. However, due to rampant anti-immigrant sentiment, especially in Texas, this family's routine trip became a nightmare. And this is a nightmare that will likely become more common for Latinos in Texas as SB4 is set to take effect on March of this year. Because after all, we're seeing such incidents of racial profiling happening now before the implementation of SB4. Imagine how these same authorities are going to act when they have the legal justification backed by the state. And just in case Latino conservatives think that they would be exempt, I want to remind you of the lesson that you should have learned from Mexican repatriation, and that's that you could be a target whether or not you are undocumented, documented, or a U.S. citizen. Your status will not matter to them as much as your ethnic, racial, or cultural identity. You will be guilty until proven citizen. And it will not matter to them how much effort you've put into being one of the good ones. And that's a lesson that you would have learned if you didn't put so much effort into seeking the validation of people who fucking hate you.